when you want to be creative, sometimes your consistency can take a backseat. Now, why do I bring this up? Why do I say this? What is even the point? Because I'm curious to know, when we're comparing artists, what if an artist is extremely consistent, but they're not very creative? What if an artist is very creative, gives us great creative albums over the course of their career, but they're not very consistent?
If you wanna go, it's a wonderful ride.
Janae Aiko is sensational. All right, how do I? So, I've been thinking something for a while. This is something I've always pondered, and looking at the Logic Mission Control single the other day, which was great, by the way. It's off the Ultra 85 album coming out August 9th. I had the same question spark in my brain. And that essentially is, and I don't have an answer, by the way, so this is going to be just me rambling for maybe 10, 12, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, we'll see how it goes, is basically just creativity versus consistency. I don't know if I have a question there. I should have thought about how I wanted to formulate that in the form of a question, but I didn't. So here we are. I feel like if you want to maintain either one of those things prolifically, one of those things has to take a backseat. You can't have a ton of creative albums and the consistency of the quality is maintained through all of those. And you can't have a ton of consistent albums and the creativity is there each time. So considering that Logic is the one that sparked this thought in my brain again. And again, I've thought about this for years, and Logic is not the first one that sparked that thought. I'll tell you the first people that sparked that thought. But Logic's one that sparked it recently, because in the Mission Control reaction, I started discussing his discography, and I said something along the lines of, to be a Logic fan, you have to be aware of inconsistency. You have to be prepared for it. You have to brace for it, because he'll drop phenomenal albums and then drop a dud. That's because he's always shooting to be creative each time. He has many creative endeavors, whether that be overarching stories with narratives, spaceships and aliens and all this stuff, and narrators and where's the album? And skits. But this album's very good. I'm not saying every album that he does that in it's bad. And most of the time, like I said, it's phenomenal. I'm just saying, you're doing this, you're telling this overarching story, you're doing this, and then maybe you just don't tie it all together because you're trying to work in your music while also still trying to be creative. And then maybe in this, I mentioned everybody, and everybody, I felt like the lyricism took a backseat. The storytelling was strong when it came to tying this whole story together. You see the artwork there. It's obviously a heavy emphasis on that story. He started with, did it start with Under Pressure? I believe it started with Under Pressure, and then Incredible True Story, you see him on the spaceship, and then this. You focus on that story so much, the lyricism, I felt like, took a backseat, wasn't very focused lyrically. Like I said, the consistency, it was very creative, but that consistency had to take a backseat. And then we get into the Bobby Tarantino series. First one was decent, but it showed the signs. It showed some red flags or yellow flags. Execution was a yellow flag that, he's going to go in a direction he should not be going. But that's him being creative. He wants to try the more trap stuff. He wants to try the different styles of music. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but that's him wanting to be creative. And like I said, when you want to be creative, sometimes your consistency can take a backseat. Now, why do I bring this up? Why do I say this? What is even the point? Because I'm curious to know, when we're comparing artists, what if an artist is extremely consistent, but they're not very creative? What if an artist is very creative, gives us great creative albums over the course of their career, but they're not very consistent, or they drop a dud every now and then? Do you go for the perfectionist run, where they've just been dropping good album, or you go with the great album, bad album, great album, bad album? They have bad albums in their thing. He's undefeated. So it's like boxing. Like, you got a fighter that's undefeated, but they, like what Floyd Mayweather gets accused of often, is he picked his fighters. He picked them when they were, not at their height, not at their best, or they were too young, or they were too old, or whatever the case. He gets accused of that. Versus a fighter that fights all the top competition, has a great record still, but occasionally loses. That's how I feel like what Logic, that's the bucket he falls in. I want to, so that's the question. That is the overall question. Think about it. Sit on it. Go use the bathroom. Shit on it. Then come back and comment or whatever your answer to that would be, because this is a genuine question. I actually, because I don't know, because when I sit around and I'm talking and discussing artists with people, I don't know the answer to that. It's something that is difficult, and I think that's why my two favorite rappers of all time are my two favorite rappers of all time. We have Nas, Eminem, both my two favorite rappers of all time. When you're trying to be creative, you're taking more risks. You're risking inconsistency within the album and with the music in general, like, because you don't know how that's going to be received. When you're being creative and you're genuinely being creative, you're introducing something to the world that they have not heard before, or they've heard it very few times. So you don't know how that's going to hit people's ears. I want to focus on this run, because this run really got me thinking. King's Disease to Magic 3. So that's a 3 years, 6 albums. I did a lot with my fingers there that didn't equate to 3 or 6. Definitely not 6. So King's Disease to Magic 3. Very good to great albums. But all produced by Hit Boy. They're very consistent. They're all good to great. But creatively, there are limitations. One, because you're trying to be prolific, you are being prolific in the amount of content you're putting out in the span of time that you've given yourself, 3 years, 6 albums, right? You can't manufacture creativity. You have to sit, experience life, something creative comes to you. Now you're trying new and creative things. You can't rush that. But if you're skilled enough, you can rush great, consistent music. It's just going to come with the sacrifice of creativity in your music. So when I listen to King's Disease 2, I listen to Magic 2 and Magic 3. They have Magic 2 and 3 flipped in here. No, they don't. Okay, never mind. I read that wrong. I'm dyslexic. I'm not, but probably. When I listen to the sequels to King's Disease and Magic, each time I wasn't surprised. Each time. When Magic 3 rolled around, and I want to say King's Disease 3, honestly, I was kind of disappointed. Not in the quality. The quality was always good. But I want something new from Nas. I want a new sound from Nas, a new sound from Hit Boy. Go work with somebody else. And don't get me wrong, Hit Boy does work with a ton of other people. So I'm mostly talking about Nas. I just know what it sounds like. And like I said, I feel like that consistency comes with the sacrifice of quality. But you can't deny the run that Nas has been on. You can't deny it. These are great albums. They're just not the most creative albums in the world after you get past King's Disease 1. So how do I rank that? So those are his past 6 albums. Let's go to Tech N9ne, because I was gonna go to Eminem, but it wouldn't be fair because Eminem doesn't put out albums nearly as frequently as that. So let's go to Tech N9ne. He puts out an album every week. So I'm gonna go to his discography. He's 5'7". Let's go to Tech N9ne, who is not nearly as consistent as what Nas just did. Put out 6 great albums. But Nas, in those 6 great albums, not over his span of his career, just those 6 great albums, is not nearly not even close to as creative as someone like Tech N9ne. So let's go to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, let's just do his last 6. So The Storm to Bliss. I couldn't tell you, because they're all years apart, or not years apart, but a year apart for the most part. I couldn't tell you, like, I'm not going to recap the whole albums because I don't remember. But I know for a fact Planet Storm was super long, especially it had like a deluxe version. That was a little unnecessary. But it was already like 20 something tracks, I think. Then the deluxe version made it like 30. It was a lot. Planet, I don't think I liked Planet when I first heard it. It was Nina. And just the cover. I'm a very visual person. Nina, I thought was all right, because Enter Fear I thought was fire. fire. That's a song that, I mean, that's the album that had just die, 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 die. It's sorrow. That song, that album, dope as mother flipper. Asinine, that was alright. Bliss, that one I thought was alright. I listened to it more. The more I listen to it, the better I think it is. But that's the thing with Tech N9ne and just creativity in general. It's something you have to get used to. You have to, when it's truly creative like this, when it's like, there's nobody else that even sounds like this. You can't just listen to it one time and be like, well, no matter what you think, whether you think it's the best thing ever or you think it's trash, you can't just listen to it once and just walk away. You have to listen to it a couple times, be like, okay, let me see what he's doing here. What is he going for? Okay, do I still think it's trash? Do I still think it's great? Whatever the case is, you have to give it a couple listens. But when being creative, you take the risk of the audience not wanting to listen to that again. It might be so creative, I'm like, I don't want to listen to this. I'm not going to come back to this. But I'm a Tech N9ne fan. Tech N9ne is one of the best lyricists of all time, if not the best. So I'm giving him multiple chances. So some of these that I said were just, all right, I'll come back to him and this is really good. I really like, I'm getting used to it. I'm getting used to the sound. But regardless, he's trying to be super creative on all these projects. He's not that consistent. And even as a Tech N9ne fan, listening to these albums, I'm going through them like, this was amazing. This was good. This was, I don't like this song at all. This was amazing. This was really good. He's rapping really great on here. But the song, the music, I'm not a fan of. This is really good. That's the experience of listening to a Tech N9ne album for me personally, because he's trying so many different sounds and different songs and merging different genres in his music. And I'm sure he's aware of this. I hope he's aware of this. If he's not, then after God knows how many years, that might be an issue. But and I'm still a fan. And I'm telling you, sometimes when I go into a Tech N9ne album, I'm expecting a song that I just do not ever want to hear again on there, because I know he's going to be trying stuff that I've never heard before, or I've, you know what I mean? So, but then I also know I'm going to get things that I never heard before that are going to sound great, and he's going to rap incredibly. And it's going to be more of that than it is going to be of bad songs. I just know something I don't like is just going to be thrown in there because he's so creative. But I think he values that creativity and that creative freedom over something like this. You're not getting that with Nas. You're not getting that with Nas and Hit Boy. They're playing it safe. They got a formula. King's Disease set the formula. They were just like, all right, let's do it 5 more times. And it's a great album 6 times. That's what this feels like. Different stories, different narratives, different, you know what I mean? Nas is Nas. Don't get me wrong. This is high level. This isn't your average Joe. This isn't your favorite rapper currently, Little Bo Peep, dropping 6 good albums. No, this is Nas. Don't get me wrong. This is Nas. I want to be clear. These are still, when I say they're great, I mean they're great. This is my favorite rapper of all time, next to Eminem. They're both tied for number 1. This is Nas. So they're great. Just want to be perfectly clear. They just don't veer off the path. They're very straightforward. Tech N9ne is like going this way. Oh, there's a tree over there. Oh, there's a dog over there. Oh, there's birds. There's birds. I want to go over here. I want to try this. I want to try this. Let's climb this tree for no reason. You know what I mean? Where Nas is like, oh, there's a road. Let's go down this road and focus on the path ahead. Another artist that Kendrick's interesting. So there's a third. So there's quality. Oh no, sorry, I spoiled it. There's consistency. There's quality. No, it's consistency. There's creativity. That's the word I was looking for. There's consistency, there's creativity, and then there's prolificness, right? So you can be consistent and have creativity if you're not putting out albums very often. I think that's what we get with Kendrick Lamar. Kendrick Lamar isn't the most prolific artist of all time. He does not put out albums as frequently as some of these other guys. Came out in 2011, dropped another one in 2012. Then we didn't see him for 3 years in 2015. Then in 2017. And then he completely just disappeared for God knows how many years. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That's 5 years, buddy. Just disappeared. I don't know when we're going to see him again. He just left TDE, so maybe that gives him a little bit more freedom. We're not counting this. That was just unreleased stuff from Butterfly. But it shows that in each of his albums, super creative. They usually have narratives, underlying themes. Very creative artist with the music and the albums as a whole, the packaging, everything. But this shows that you can be super creative. This shows that you can be super creative and consistent. The amount of music you put out is going to have to take a backseat, though. You can't rush a To Pimp a Butterfly. You're not getting To Pimp a Butterfly in 2013. No, it takes a couple years to create this. Not just the music and getting the music together and actually physically making the music, but experiencing enough life to put that content into the music. You understand what I'm saying? Do you? So there's that aspect as well. Then we have somebody like Eminem, who again, I think falls into the Tech-9 Logic bucket. Not as much Tech-9. Tech-9 puts out music very, very regularly. That's the thing with Tech-9 too. Tech-9 is crazy. That I don't understand about Tech-9. He's like the outlier. He's super creative on all of his music. And I think I mentioned this earlier. You can't be super creative and put out music every single year. He does it. That's why he's up there too. He's like in my top 5, top 10, whatever. It might be number 3, might be whatever. He might be. He's up there. He's up there. Cause that's ridiculous. He's super creative, and it's like year after year after year, he's just dropping creative music. Like something I've never heard before each time. That's nuts. And he's great. It's great, genuinely. I'm sure mixed in here, there's some albums that aren't as great, but him as an artist is phenomenal. So he's an outlier. He breaks these rules. But Eminem is more like a Logic, where each album, I don't know, I think he's his own beast, because Logic puts out music every year too. So that's a whole other thing. Let's go to his Discog. So Infinite 96. Nobody really talks about that. That was when he was in Discreets still. So Slim Shady LP. That came out. Super creative album. Amazing album. Fantastic album. One of the greatest albums of all time. Arguably his best album. I might say it's his best album. March Mathers LP. Fantastic album. Sensational album. Amazing album. Completely different from March Mathers LP. A completely different style. Completely different side of him. And I think that's what was the goal. He mentioned that in not a few interviews, regularly. That's what it's a different side of him. It's not as silly, it's not as zany, it's not these crazy cartoony stories. Eminem Show, concept album, kind of basing it off the Truman Show. Again, just more of what I love about that's a whole other video. I love about Eminem's albums is their time capsules in his life. You listen to these, you know exactly what's happening on in pop culture. You know exactly what's going on in his life. Each one, you go to Recovery, you know exactly what's going on in pop culture. You know exactly what's going on in his life, et cetera, et cetera. They're time capsules. You go right back in time, listen to one of these. They're not these isolated things where I'm just talking about, random subject matter that can apply, that are timeless. No. You listen to this, very 2000s. Not stylistically, music is timeless, but the content, it's very much about what's going on in that zeitgeist, right? So anyway, super creative albums, dud, trash, garbage. What? 3 of the greatest albums of all time, garbage. You get what I'm saying? So picking up what I'm putting down at this point. Relapse, very, very mixed. I think Relapse is, especially recently, I've been getting the itch for Relapse. I've been really liking Relapse. Super creative, but even within the album, there's inconsistency in the music because it's so creative. This is a horrorcore classic. I think this is the greatest horrorcore album of all time. I think it's hard to even debate against that, considering Dr. Dre produced this mother flipper. So have a good time trying to debate me on that. Then you have Recovery. Some people think these albums aren't good. like Relapse and Recovery, I think this is, especially Recovery, is fantastic. But some people think it's not good. Then we get to March Mathers LP 2. Some people think it's not good. I think it's a great album, especially the deluxe version, which I know is a little unfair to include that because not everybody heard that. But the deluxe version is phenomenal. I think the bass version is good. It's a very, very good album. Then we get to Revival. Then we get to Kamikaze. Then we get to Music to Be Murdered By. All of these albums are significantly different from each other. They're completely different albums stylistically. And when you do that, you run the risk of being inconsistent. You run the risk of having a bad album because you're trying to be creative each time you step out the door. You're trying to do something that nobody's ever seen before. And I think there's a reason this album wasn't well received. Not just because it wasn't a very good or cohesive album, but I think I'm going to save that for another time. I got to go to work. So let me wrap this up. But that threw me off. But I guess overall, that's my question. I won't let this drag on too long. How do I rank artists when I'm measuring creativity? So let's just take Eminem's the past couple of years, right? Past couple of years, that's past three albums versus Nas's last 6 albums. Nas put them out more regularly. Obviously, Eminem 2018 to 2024, Nas was 2020 to 2023. And Nas's were much more consistent quality-wise within the albums and the albums as a whole. Eminem, consistency, I would say these are consistently good. All 3 of these albums are good, but within the albums, occasionally you get some bad songs. Or some songs that aren't as good as the other ones. Good as the other ones. I won't say bad songs. I don't think this has any bad songs. Music to Be Murdered By. Kamikaze, you have some songs that aren't as good as the other. That aren't as good as the other ones. But Revival. No, let's do 4. Let's do 4 just to throw Revival in there. So with these 4, you have a, from the consensus of hip hop fans, you have a bad album thrown in this, right? What is going on? You have a bad album thrown in there, but it's significantly more creative than anything Nas put out in the past 6 years. When have you ever heard an album like Kamikaze, where he just came out the gate dissing everybody in the industry? Dissing anybody. The song it's called Kamikaze. He knew what he was doing. He knew the risk he was taking. He was like, all right, I'm about to crash this motherfucker. It's just like, he knew what he was doing. When have you ever heard an album like that? Music to Be Murdered By. Super conceptual. Super taking risks. Again, creative. He had those songs from the perspective of a mass ooter, right? And then, but also from the perspective of a performer killing the show, right? But metaphorically and literally. And then the whole album, the songs, double entendre, like super creative songs like that. And then you got songs with Ed Sheeran, you know, but that gives variety within the album, but it also makes the album less consistent. Whether the music's good or not, it's less consistent. Death of Slim Shady, completely super creative concept. Performed phenomenally. Great beats, great music, great everything about this is great. This album of the year, by the way, or one of. But this is bad. So how do I compare that? How do I rank this next to Nas? Do I say Nas is better because it's more consistent? This is an undefeated fighter versus somebody who fights better competition but loses sometimes. When you're trying to be creative, it's a fight. It's a fight. You're fighting better competition. You're fighting Mike Tyson. He's fighting some other guys, and they're good fighters, and he's winning. But it's like, yeah, who's the better fighter? How do you know? I don't know if any of that made sense. I'm rambling. It's 9 a.m. I have to go to work. So it's just a question I have, a little short discussion. It's giving me something to put out today. So yeah, you think about that. You think about that for a long time and come back to me. If you don't, guess I'll never see you again. I was listening to Davies. I was listening to Big Sean, but I also was listening to Davies. So I see you boys on the flippity flip and girls on the flippity flip. I don't have an outro for this. I think I'm just gonna. Should I get one, or is that corny? I was gonna say something stupid, but you know what? I'll save it. You know what? Yeah. Not good at goodbyes.